listener production.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt. We're constantly being warned about the prevalence and the danger of scammers, whether it's via text, call or email. It feels like they're everywhere. And while it's hard enough trying to ward off these dodgy operators out to steal our hard-earned, it turns out we're looked at as a scammer's dream. An investigation by the ABC recently found Aussies are the number one target for scam calls because we're considered wealthy and trusting. It also found that scammers think our law enforcement agencies aren't as hard-hitting as those in places like the US. So is it true our AFP isn't beefed up enough to track down cyber criminals targeting us from overseas call centres? And can we change the perception that we're easy prey? Joining me now is cybersecurity expert from Monash University and former AFP detective, Professor Nigel Phair. Professor, welcome to The Briefing. First off, do you agree with this assertion made by a whistleblower that Australians are easy prey when it comes to scams?
100% we are. We're seen as low-hanging fruit in this jurisdiction by scammers globally, particularly the hot centres of where scams are originating from, but really all cyber crimes. When you look at the statistics of either reported scams or losses from scams, and it's only reported, of course, from a jurisdictional perspective, we pay a lot.
What is it about Australians that make us susceptible to scams?
It's a tough one to really nail down. I think generally we are reasonably polite. It's pretty hard to say to someone if a scammer calls you on the phone just to hang up, not even engage them at all. That sort of isn't how we're sort of created. So I don't know globally whether that's a similar scenario, but we could save ourselves a lot of money if we just hung up on scammers.
Are there other factors that make it more appealing to target Australians specifically when it comes to scams?
Well, we're a rich jurisdiction. We're a very well-connected jurisdiction. Everyone's got some type of mobile smart device in their pocket. We're used to being online. We do social media, we do email, we do banking, we do all sorts of things. So when you get approached online for something that appears to be believable, then we fall prey for it because we're used to doing so much of our lives online.
I was personally a little bit surprised to hear the idea that Australians are easy prey. When I heard the reasoning is that, we have money and we're friendly, I was like, I guess that makes sense. But it did surprise me to hear that that's the view of scammers overseas who are trying to, steal our hard-earned. I guess, would it be worth us changing how we're viewed on the world stage to avoid scammers? Are we too nice? Are we too friendly? What could we do to potentially change this perception?
Oh, look, I don't think we need to change the perception that we're too friendly. We need to change the perception that we fall prey to scams of all shapes and sizes, of all ilk. That's what we've got to do. There's lots and lots of things we can do. All we have at the moment is really piecemeal education, and that doesn't work. Again, if we look at the stats, the numbers keep rising. So, it's tried to say that it's a whole of economy approach. It's law enforcement, it's government, it's the banks, it's us. And I see a lot of stories, Sacha, online about people that fall prey to all sorts of scams, and it's terrible. All across the board, it's terrible. People lose money, sometimes a lot of money. But we still need to remember there's a lot of personal responsibility required in this, rather than blaming, well, I sent this money to somewhere and the bank should have stopped it. When really, you shouldn't have sent the money there. You should have done a bit more due diligence before you sent it to some third party. But there's lots of things that can happen along the way.
I want to talk next about something else that was discussed in this ABC investigation with this whistleblower. They talked about how Americans, for example, aren't viewed as easy prey when it comes to scams because of the FBI. Now, Australia's version of the FBI, I suppose, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the AFP. So why they do the same thing, right? So why are they not viewed in the same way as the FBI?
Yeah, I really don't know. But yes, the AFP is our national/international policing agency. They have liaison officers throughout the world globally. In fact, probably after the FBI, we probably are the next biggest jurisdiction with the amount of AFP offices in offshore jurisdiction. And they're doing everything from general transnational crime to drugs to cyber to everything. So we have a really good capability. Of course, you'll rely on not just Australia's capability, but that of the home jurisdiction that they're operating in. So it's unsurprising to say that a lot of cyber criminals acting in jurisdictions as their domicile, in ones with very weak or limited law enforcement, or where there's high levels of corruption, where they can pay their way out of problems.
What is the AFP doing in this space? Like, talk to us about some of the specific ways that the AFP is working in scamming overseas to try and shut these people down.
Well, firstly, they are in need to work in concert with a whole of government approach. And there's, a national scams committee and strategy and all that sort of thing now. So that's really important. We're finally sort of looking at holistically. It's always traditionally been coordinated by the ACCC, but they've never really done anything. And I think that's probably my main historic criticism. There's been lots of talk, there's been lots of conferences, but not much doing. The next thing is going back to my point of you're also relying on the jurisdiction these people are in. You can't arrest your way out of online problems. So what the AFP is doing, and indeed what they need to do and continue to do, is disrupt the cyber criminals, is to make it hard for them, is put sand in their gears and really disrupt them. So they think, you know what, we're not going to pick on Australia. And it's not because we're susceptible to giving away a lot of money. It's because it's just too hard a jurisdiction to operate in. And cyber criminals will take a path of least resistance, like most criminals will. And we want them to go to somewhere else and ply their trade.
What other ways could we be better? And I guess I'm speaking from a range of approaches, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's government, and like you've already touched on, personal responsibility. Talk us through where we're falling short when it comes to tackling this issue, given how big of a problem it is.
Well, I think we're falling short everywhere. And first off, you got to understand the problem. So last year, $2.7 billion in reported scam losses. I think it's probably about a fifth of what we actually lost.
Wow.
So we've got to understand, and this is at a ministerial level all the way down, police commissioners, heads of agencies and everything. We spend so much of our time online, and it is a public place, and it needs to be policed just like the town square is. So we've got to put the appropriate amount of resourcing in, can measure it to the amount of time that we spend online, the amount of benefit we spend online. Like, we get huge benefits, as I said, internet banking, social media, email, maps. There's great opportunity for us. So we've got to get really strategic about it first, about understanding the problem and appropriately resourcing what the problem is. Because if we do nothing, Australians will be less likely to do things online. They won't be adopters like we are now, because they're not going to have the trust, the safety, or the confidence to do so. So we're talking big picture, big state stuff. When you take it down from 50,000 feet to 50 feet, there's lots and lots of things we can do. So yes, we talked about personal responsibility, and that's super, super important. The banks, I believe, could be doing a lot more. They're trying really hard, and they do some really good things. But if I send you money, Sacha, there's 3 fields that I fill out in the internet banking transaction. It's your name, it's your account number, it's your BSB, if I just send through a bank-to-bank transfer. Now, the BSB and the account name work. The name doesn't. I can put any name against your BSB and account number. And that's a big problem, because if you're being scammed and you think you're sending money to a legitimate organisation and you've got their BSB and account number, and they give you the name of the account, but really that name doesn't belong to that organisation, it belongs to some scam. So if we had that field as an operative field, I think we would save a lot of money. Part of the personal responsibility is the communications, and lots of training and education, lots of videos, lots of all sorts of things. But I still think our messaging is really wrong. We still say things like, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Well, I can tell you, every person that fell victim to a cybercrime didn't think it was too good to be true. They thought this investment opportunity was great. They thought this car that was for sale was a real car. They thought this employment opportunity existed. So telling people these sorts of messaging is not the right thing to do. So we've got to get our messaging a lot more cut through, and getting people to stop and think before they act with things like that in the online environment. And of course, there's a trade-off with everything. The payment systems are getting faster and faster. We like that. The fact that you can change your phone number from one provider to another we like that because we might get a better deal from one to the other. But that enables cyber criminals to do account takeover so much faster as well.
Okay, quite an extensive list there. Before we let you go, Professor, I'm keen to hear from you. You're an expert in this space. What sort of new trends should we maybe be on the lookout for when it comes to scamming at the moment?
I think we need to be just cognizant of existing trends first and foremost. And that is the fact that you will get contacted by a variety of means, whether it's telephone, whether it's text, whether it's instant messaging, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's whatever, with opportunities which seem great. And some of these people are very, very good. That's why we've got such big losses. So, investment scams, which is number one, it will continue to be. Crypto scams, which are part of that subset, will continue to be. We see more crypto wallets. As the economy teeters on the edge of recession, you're going to see people chasing those unrealistic investment opportunities which are presented through scams. So that's probably where I think from an investment scam perspective. If we look at probably the next bucket of after investment, it's romance and dating scams. There's nothing sort of new in that because what has worked before will continue to work in the future. And that is just preying on vulnerable people. And it's the extent that they don't want you making rational and sensible decisions. So, every trick in the book, every psychological trick in the book of keeping a potential victim online is what it's all about. There's just lots of really good scams out there that are just consistently working. I don't see cyber criminals particularly pivoting anywhere else when what they do now works.
Professor Nigel Phair, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your insights. Definitely a lot of food for thought, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sasha. Great to chat.
That was Nigel Phair, Professor of Cybersecurity at Monash University and former AFP detective, speaking with me there. Thanks for listening to The Briefing. That is all for this episode. A reminder, we put out full eps of our Weekend Briefing chats on YouTube. Search Listener Newsroom to see them and don't forget to subscribe. You can also catch up with our other video content on TikTok at Listener Newsroom and on Instagram, which is at The Briefing Podcast. And if you liked this ep, why not share it? Maybe your mum or your dad or your grandma needs some advice to avoid scammers. It is a really big way to help us keep doing what we're doing here at The Briefing. We'd really appreciate it. And don't forget, the Weekend Briefing will be in your feed tomorrow morning with Antoinette Lattouf speaking to Khaled Beydoun, who is a law professor from the United States, and he's been posting relentlessly with news updates on Palestine, Israel, and now Lebanon to his 2.5 million followers on Instagram.
Being a student of history, one thing you do know is that, number one, all empires fall, and second, genocides have an end conclusion to them. It's just a matter of when. It's just a matter of, how many people get to endure and survive in the short term. It's going to end. I kind of see what's happening right now is sort of like the last gasp of, very militant Zionism trying to claim as much land as possible, and the United States sort of looking, at this geopolitical sort of mirror and understanding that its role, its imperial sort of footprint in the world is diminishing.
This was his only interview while in Australia on a speaking tour. Highly recommend having a listen to that. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt. We'll see you next time.
Listener.